so during this interruption, a point was brought up that yes. So as we say, like the real test to Phowa will be successful or not. I said I don't really have much interest or confidence in grass sticking out of the head and all that sort of stuff, because they're not really that reliable. What is reliable is right now, even in this reality, if I find myself stuck in a situation of a negative state of mind, a real dark cloud hanging over, am I able to Phowa? Am I able to get out, go out, leave from this situation or not? That is ultimately the more reliable training that we should engage in. So then as a point, a nuance is brought in to this to say, it's also not that, the moment you think like that, you think you can go out, and often you cannot, you get stuck. So when you get stuck, this is when more elaborate, so to say, instructions are also available, such as in the form of apply the 5 powers. And how you apply the 5 powers is not necessarily step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Remember that there are these 5 powers. The power of engaging in virtue. The power of aspiration, meaning prayer. The power of training, if you can. The power of determination, strongly, the force. So these are the 5 powers given in the Lojong. Then as we develop the 5 powers, then our ability to Phowa, swiftly, according to the Phowa prayer that we do. So the Phowa prayer that we do, which is on the surface, it is for the time of death. It says, right, grant your blessings for the realization of the profound path of Phowa. So now, as we say this prayer, you can understand, this is not just about death. Like right now, grant your blessings for the realization of the profound path, this profound path of Phowa. Grant your blessings for reaching the celestial realm by the swift path of Phowa. You can reach the celestial realm right now. Right now. In fact, you have to reach the celestial realm right now. If you think it's something that will happen later, then later might not happen. But if you can settle it now, and it says, grant your blessings so that at the time of death, this is like the third one, right? These 3 lines. It might seem like they're all talking about the same thing, but I think they're not. In this prayer, grant your blessings, the first one. I supplicate so and so, and then grant your blessings for the realization of the profound path of Phowa. Then grant your blessings for reaching the celestial realm by the swift path of Phowa. Then grant your blessings so that at the time of death, I and others attain rebirth in Sukhavati through Phowa. So the third one is about the time of death. The first 2, I would interpret as now. Now. And even when, right, based on what we said earlier, even if you cannot successfully, like now, Phowa into the celestial realm, you can Phowa out of, to go do better. You can do better, And it's not either or, hell realm or celestial realm.
At least let me not make other people miserable.
Yeah, that too. Let me not make other people miserable, yes. And create negative karma. Instead of planting virtue, we plant non-virtue. It's only unhappy people cause trouble. Happy people rarely cause trouble. And then some people, they think, they can only be happy when they cause other people misery. That's basically getting the understanding of karma upside down.
That's my brother.
No. We don't point fingers at anyone. And as long as we do that, then Dharma becomes weapon. Don't do that. No, don't. And always Dharma is to arrows to target our self-cherishing. Never use Dharma to evaluate other people. Even as a Dharma teacher, in some ways that is my job. Even that, is very dangerous. Don't.
You've said in the past that the best protection is bodhicitta.
That's a statement from Gongchi. Jidensum said, the best protection is the protection of bodhicitta.
And with so many things, 5 of this and 5 of that, it seems to me like when we're in messes that we need to get out of, if we can at least think of that. And I've found that I don't always want to have bodhicitta. If it's sort of rumbling around in my mess. But to me, looking at all of this, that seems to be the simplest solution, a very difficult one, but still, if I can think of that, at least it puts my mind in a different place. I may not be out of it, but I mean, there are all these 5, at least I know about bodhicitta. I know that is the best protection. Whether I can always utilize it or not is another matter. But would it not make sense to try to focus on one of these things or 2 of these things to Phowa out of situations rather than trying to think, well, which applies here the most?
Do you want more tools in your tool bag or less tools?
No, I think fewer tools would be better for me.
But have you effectively used the single tool?
No, I haven't.
Therefore, maybe not fewer tools.
But rather than trying to think of 5, which there are these 5, just think of 1.
But if the 1 is fuzzy, that's the problem.
I mean, all 5 can be fuzzy.
You need to sharpen the 5. They say that the single solution is the best. Most of us cannot do anything with it. You are Buddha. That's the single solution. I don't think so.
Not right now.
Yeah, then you need 4 arms, 6 hands, 3 faces, 4 legs, battle axe, a bunch of leaves.
Something.
Right?
Something else.
Like Halloween.
Yeah, like Halloween all the time because,
Then you start to worry when you get to
I mean, at the end of the day, right, this is not a system where, because I say so or because Buddha says so. This is just cautioning you, explore a little bit. If our tendency is to say, I'll just remember the 1, you probably need to look at the many. And then if your tendency is, I'm going to go figure out all the ins and outs of the many, you need to go investigate the 1. That is my style of teaching. Because if we feed our habits, it's okay if that habit turns out to be what will free you. But often, the habits that we have right now are habits that trap us. Again, nothing is for sure. You could need to go experiment. Knowing that I can engage in virtue, like bodhicitta. Oh yes, bodhicitta, right? It might offer some relief. But if it says, you know, like I'm really agitated now, but there's the power of virtue. And what does virtue mean? Right? Like the power of creating virtue. It'd be like, okay, look around. Right? Those are given not to complicate. Those are given as skillful means. That's why they're called skillful means. You know? That's why I said in the short term, it might look like the single is easier. But I don't know if I think going all the way back to the beginning of today, right? I said I can go the way, I could go the way of like, do this because I say so, it's going to work. Or here's the whole big picture. And it'll take a while to figure out this whole big picture because it is complex. But if you figure out this big picture, then you don't need anyone to tell you anything anymore. You don't need, like, is the left face right or the left face white or blue? Not so important anymore. But not so important not in the sense of I don't need it, but not so important in the sense of I know exactly how to use it at my disposal. You have all these things at your disposal. It's quite Baroque. Yeah. Otherwise, there is the single method of staring at the wall. Soto Zen. It works really well if you follow the method all the way through. Really, I'm not saying it out of politeness. It works really well if that's your kind of makeup, works really well. Follow that method all the way through. It will work. This tradition is kind of Baroque. Yes?
I've noticed a lot where there's always reference to mind control and
Training?
mind training. And I just noticed a lot of people, when they're in panic, they don't have control.
Yes.
When they're a victim of their own habits, whether it's habit of thought or physical habit, they're not in control of it. If you cannot remember, then you don't have enough faculty to even remember what you're supposed to be doing when you have a problem. So to me, I find the mind training slogans very helpful because they just give you a reference. Some I understand, some I have no idea what you're talking about. But
Yes. And so the way to relate to the 5 to the 7 to the 8 is not necessarily memorizing the 5, the 7, and the 8.
Right.
The way to relate is to see that these are all tools, And so
Some
use this
work,
one.
some don't.
See, use this one. Use this one. Use this one. Yeah. So don't relate to them as, commandments. Jiden Sumgan also says, he says, the more advanced you are, the more extensive your practice should be with details. So, there's something to be said about at the beginning, just keep it to a few. But he says, as you advance, you need to get more detailed. So there's something to be said, as you and so as that goes, then it's more like the essence level of things. You need to get a good understanding of that. But to understand that, we need concepts and words. But don't let the concepts and words lead you into this confusing forest. Zoom out, zoom in. It's also shifting focus, you know. Reinvesting. You know 14 different types of pine. Now turn to 14 states of mind.
Could you say more about the point from Jiden Sungun about karma being momentary instances in mind? Because the way that
Wait, say that again? Instead of what?
Jiden Sungun's point about karma being in essence
Phenomena are embodiments of momentary thoughts.
right.
That's the statement, yes.
So the way that I thought about that is like every phenomenon is like you could trace it back to a moment in the mind.
This is the moment you need to focus on. Don't focus on tracing back to a moment over there.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that?
And
Nothing.
then you think now.
Now, look at now. These are all momentary. Is his point.
Phenomena, right?
Yes. Phenomena right now, not phenomena of the past. Phenomena right now are embodiments of momentary thoughts.
So the focus is on the
Momentary nature of experience right now. Right now is bondage, right now is liberation. He's not canceling out teachings about the intricate web of causes and conditions and all of that. He's just reminding us, don't get too caught up in how complicated, right? How involved, how many lifetimes, karma, because people do get lost there.
It's incalculable.
Yeah, and it's considered one of the imponderables, the exact, So sometimes, often, especially, I think, as religious types, you talk about, karma, as if, it's all about things that's in the past. Yes, when it is useful and necessary to help you be free from being imprisoned with situations, you can skillfully use karma that way and say, oh, this is ripening of a past karma. But even more basic than that point is, but then it also means right now you can snap out of it if you want. Do you want or not? And you're like, I want, but no ability. That's when you need, the 7 shades of karma. Then if you have the 7 shades of karma or whatever, I just make that up. There's no 7 shades of karma. Okay, don't go Google that. There's no such thing. I just made that up. So suddenly you will get a question. What are the 7 shades of karma? No, it's no 7 shades of karma. I just made that up. Okay, but if there was such a thing, that's when the 7 shades of karma might help to unentangle you. Yeah. And knowing that, without needing Google, will be quite handy. But is it absolute to know that? No. None of this is absolute in that sense. Page 61 of that Phowa text, the Phowa lineage prayer. So every Phowa, formal Phowa practice has its own lineage. And so you do the one that you're connected to, and you do it, then we do it now with the understanding of Phowa that we've been exploring, so that it's not, if you have the proper transmission for the technique, very good. If you don't, it doesn't mean you can't practice Phowa. This is a more essential Phowa that we're talking about. Let's do this. If you don't have the text for then listen, and just now is the time to meditate or to think about this more essential Phowa that we've been talking about. Again, Bima Junela Sova De Sablam Phowa Jumbar Jinjilo Nerlam Phowe Gacho Dobar Jinjilo Daso Dine Tsebo Gyurmata Dewa Chindu Kirwa Jinjilo Sanje Opa Mela Chaselo Nida Sangye La Sowade Sume Namka Gyatsen La Sowade Togden Sangha Bhadra La Sowade Pago Drime Lodro La Sowade Choje Sangye Gyatsen La Sowade Sume Mati Shenchen La Sowade Yonzen Punso Namgya La Sowade Kenchen Namjun Punso La Sowade Jesun Kuncho Ratna La Sowade Riksen Jogi Drakpa La Sowade Kuncho Trinle Namgya La Sowade Kuncho Trinle Sampo La Sowade Trinle Dondrup Chogya La Sowade Kuncho Tenzin Durdu La Sowade Yonzen Choki Gyatsen La Sowade Tenzin Choki Nima La Sowade Gyabdak Deme Gyatsen La Sowade Jetsun Dharma Dwaza La Sowade Karchen Chanchu Bangpo La Sowade Trinchen Lodro Gyatsen La Sowade Rinchen Tempe Zekien La Sowade Koncho Tukje Nima La Sowade Lodro Chuang Lodro La Sowade Purgen Nuden Torje La Sowade Jesun Koncho Chokya La Sowade Tenzin Choki Lodro La Sowade Tukten Shiwe Lodro La Sowade Tenzin Choki Chukne La Sowade Jinchen Tsawe Lama La Sowade Samlam Phowa Jumbar Jinjilo Nirlam Phowe Kacho Dropa Jinjilo Daso Dine Tsebo Gyurmata Dewa Chindu Kyerwa Jinjilo Sangye Opa Mela Chaselo. In this particular Drigunkagyu lineage of Phowa called planting the stalk, there is a song, a Vajra song, that is included in this practice that doesn't come from Pemasambhara's transmission, but it's introduced in there. And today, when Phowa is done, like at Drigunkagyu monasteries, this song is brought in as well. Especially Phowa when done for someone else. So the mother monastery of Drigunkagyu is called, colloquially, it's a much longer name. Most Tibetan names are very long, but the short one we call Drigumtil. Drigumtil is the mother monastery. It's in central Tibet, northeast of Lhasa, about 90 kilometers, something like that. There, that monastery for general across Tibetan, among Tibetan people, the most famous actually, they might not know what is Drigungkagyu, you know, but they know this monastery because it's considered one of the most proper place for you to be disposed, meaning the body. We do cremation here, or we do burial there. Tibetans do what's known as sky burial, meaning the body is fed to vultures, and it's done by chopping up the body. So there are two main sky burial grounds in Tibet. Two that I know of, at least. Sometimes they say there's three. I don't know where the third one is. But out of these two, the one at Drigungtil is considered one of the most blessed place for sky burial. And so then, because of that, lots of bodies are brought from all over Tibet. Sometimes, a week away by road, people bring bodies to that burial ground. The evening is the sky burial is done early morning. So the evening before that, by afternoon or throughout the day, bodies will be brought to the monastery and put in the courtyard. And then at the end of that day, before sunset, all the monks will gather and do practices, and finally do Phowa practice. And during that time, this song is called Song That Clarifies Mindfulness, or clarifies recollection. And it's a song by Jigten Sumden. So if you look at the Phowa text that we have here at the temple, it's page 67. So the story here, it says, once when Jigten Sumden was residing in Drigungtil Monastery, he gathered his senior students at the meadow behind and above the monastery. That eventually became that burial ground, but not yet according to this story. Yeah? It's sort of telling also how it became such. He gathered them above the monastery and asked each of them to display any miraculous feats that they were able to. So show your power over ordinary phenomena, like magic powers. All but one was able to comply with their guru's order. And this disciple, Rinchen suddenly died out of great sense of shame and disappointment. When the undertakers tried to dismember his corpse to feed to the vultures, strangely the body resisted the knife. Then when Jigten Sumden was told this, he went to Rinchen corpse and placing his walking stick at the heart center of Rinchen, touching that, then he sang the following song. So these are like pith instructions that he gave to Rinchen. So he sang a song to Rinchen. So at some point, this song was brought and combined with the Phowa practice from Pema Sambhava, and brought together, so that during Phowa now, when it's done for other people especially, it's you do the Phowa 3 times. The third time, it's at the end of this song. The end of this song. So briefly, I just want to read to you the translation of the song. So it says, I bow at the feet of glorious Pamodrupa, which is Jigten Sumden's main teacher. Then he said to his student, listen, Rinchen, my son. Whoa! Kind of an exclamation of sadness. In the face of impermanence and death, activities of the world are deceptive. They are just lies. The 8 dharmas are colors of a rainbow. Think, can you put your trust in them? Can you put your trust in them? When you see the separation of gathered friends, the affection of relatives and friends is deceptive, meaning unreliable. You cannot trust. Even heartfelt words are basically echoes in the air. Think, can you put your trust in them? When growth and decline of the four elements of the body occurs, the illusion of strength and ability are just lies, deceptive. Best practices. Tell me, you want to get in the habit. When growth and decline of the four elements of the body occurs, this illusion of strength and ability are just lies, deceptive. Youthfulness is like flowers of autumn. Think, can you put your trust in it? When you see, can you put your trust in it? When you see the suffering of birth and death, the happiness of the assemblies of gods and men is a lie. The joy and suffering of the wheel of samsara. Think, can you put your trust in it? To the father's tree trunk of bodhicitta, the partiality of disciples is a lie. Non-virtuous and misleading friends, think, can you put your trust in them? When you understand that all sentient beings are your parents, attachment to self-cherishing is deceptive. It's a lie. The hearer's vehicle of self-liberation, think, can you put your trust in it? And here it's basically going through more and more subtle forms of like being deceived. And so some of these, it's quite technical. But the point is that they're going into more and more subtle layers of like being deceived. Self-deception at the end, not like anyone out there is trying to deceive you. When you become convinced of the cause and the result of karma, the instructions on non-effort is a lie. So this is a level of practice where you get so carried away by, oh, there's nothing to do, no effort necessary. But if you really understand karma, then something like that, also turns out to be unreliable or deceptive. Thunder without rain in an empty sky. Think, can you put your trust in it? For the guru who has the realization of power and blessings, the demonic obstacles and strayings are a lie. Chattering prayers like a parrot. Think, can you put your trust in it? More literally here is said like a parrot repeating words of like tantra, like Vajrayana stuff, which is a lot of prayer, a lot of talk about dun, like demons we talked about this morning, all those things. He says, when you see someone who has true realization, all these stuff, all these, notions of harm and help, they're all meaningless. Then he says, when you realize the nature of your mind, the notion that there are three limitless kalpas, three limitless eons in order to achieve liberation, basically, this is deceptive. Think, can you put your trust in it? Finally, this last stanza is why this has now been included in the poem. It says, in this cemetery called gathering relics, are you sad, son, at being alone? Since all is impermanent and must die, Rinchen-dra, don't be attached. The idea that the body cannot be cut is that his attachment is so strong. If your mind is still attached, if you're still distressed, transfer it to your guru's heart. And he pointed with his walking stick, like making a physical connection. And he says, now transfer it to my heart, and you'll be fine. And it is said that from there, finally, Rinchen-dra was free. And then when they dismembered him to offer to the vultures, they found jewels in him. How literally, it's up to you. They found jewels inside his body. They all turned into precious jewels. So this, elsewhere, Jigten Sungren's teachings, he says, this is the ultimate Phowa. The Phowa where you transfer into the Guru's heart. Now, this should not be turned into, another kind of, again, a theistic understanding. So in one of the Vajra statements of Jigten Sungren, it says that the supreme Phowa is to recognize the inseparability between your mind and your Guru's mind. That is the supreme Phowa. So this is called like the Dharmakaya Phowa. Dharmakaya Phowa comes with realization, a complete realization. So here, right, it says your own mind, meaning yourself. Right? Again, like we sometimes say so much, your own mind, your own mind, your own mind. Then you think there's me, and then there's my mind. This is Buddhist technical language, like you, right? So you, the true you, right? Not this body, right? Not the passing things. Whatever you think you are, actually, just think that you. You can start with that. Even if it is not the final view or understanding, you just start with that. Whatever you think you are, right? Whatever you think the real you is, right? Think that. And then, here it's more for those who have received or effectively come to a point where when the teacher teaches you about the nature of your mind, you have gained some recognition about that nature. Yeah? So your own innate clear mind, the innate clear mind that is shown to you by your teacher, so 2 now, right? And the third, the basic clear mind of the Guru, that these 3 are no different. When you know that, the one thing to know, Judy, when you know that.
Got it.
Yes, got it, you're right. Got it, right? Then there's no place to go. There is no one going, and there's no going to go. So there's no Phowa to learn, no destination for Phowa, no subject going anywhere. That is called the ultimate Phowa. So here, this statement is given to address the other views. Is like, you do Phowa using this technique, that technique, this technique, that technique. And in fact, in the collected works of Jigten Sungren, there is 1 volume out of the 12 volumes. In 1 volume, a huge, big chunk is on all these different techniques of Phowa. He has many different types of Phowa too. So he's not saying, like the techniques are not necessary or not helpful. He's not saying that. But he is saying here is like a corrective to too much, I think, I would say, to too much emphasis on technique without first understanding what lies behind those techniques. What is the essence that you need to ground yourself in? Then, no matter what technique you receive, so in that sense, you can go receive Phowa from any Phowa practice. If you ask me, with any of the legitimate, try not to go for things that someone just made up yesterday. It could work, I mean, who's to say? But not being tested yet. But really, any of those techniques would work if we have the essence level understanding. And that's what we can work on now, all the time. Transfer it to your guru's heart. So that's the ultimate Dharmakaya Phowa. Joe and Judy have seen this Phowa in Jabun too, right? 12 times? 12 times for you? Do you remember?
Both times?
Well, only one time for you, but do you remember in the courtyard? Did you?
The bodies?
Yeah. And that was Phowa. The monks all
Hmm.
sitting around. They were doing Phowa. Yeah, the body is wrapped up in blankets, tied up in a fetal position. Just put there. And then the tradition is after Phowa, then the family or friends that brought the body up will stay there for that night by the body somewhere close. Then tomorrow they have to carry it up to the sky burial ground. We do intend at Urban to offer the Phowa in a more detailed manner, and that is geared towards then the proper formal transmission. Again, like I said, when it comes to the proper formal transmission of the technique of the specific Phowa meditation, it needs to be done in person. But the course that leads to the transmission, we could do it this way still online if you're not around here. So at some point in the future we will announce this Phowa course that will lead to the formal transmission of a specific practice. Questions? Comments?
I'm a little bit curious about the idea of how Phowa fits in a practical context to one's lifetime practice. Like there are a lot of practices to choose from. This one seemed very important, practical. And so then, is it like once people learn it, it's the only thing they do? I'm assuming not. But then also in preparation.
You mean the specific technique itself?
Like the practice.
The specific technique itself?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, after the formal transmission, they say you do it on the full moon and new moon days. Then that's it. I know someone who, after they received the transmission, started doing it every day, and then at some point things went really messed up, and it took years for him to undo that. No, they say no, you don't do this every day. You might do the transmission and then do this for every day, intensively for one period of time, and then once you have some signs that you have experienced some of this, then that's it. not that's it, but then it's not a daily practice. You do it full moon and new moon, just kind of to keep the continuity of remembering how this is done, and then at the time of death, you can utilize it. Yeah. The technique itself, the principle of Phowa, that's something we have to develop all the time.
Going back to the methods to transfer our mindset or our stuckness in a certain state,
Mm-hmm.
you have thought of different things, right? So
Mhm.
it's part of Vajrayana to have these different methods like
Yes.
sign offering.
Yes,
guided oral,
many, all these things, yeah.
many tools too.
There are many tools, yes, because we have so many circumstances, you know. If only we can be so firm, so confident, you know, that one thing is enough. Then yeah, you dig that well, you dig it deep, you get water, you know. But here, I'm not saying you dig 20 wells. You should still be digging the same well. But from time to time, if you get bored digging this well, you can imagine or visualize you're digging some other well. Oh, I need to do Sang now. Oh, I need to do Panashavari now. Oh, I need to do Chud now. Oh, I need to do Vajakalaya now. Yeah. As long as you're not literally climbing out of this well, go dig another well. As long as you keep digging this well, but pretend that you're digging some other well.
Or using a different tool to dig.
Yes. Yeah, or using a different tool, you know. Okay, let's use a different tool, you know. But make sure you're digging the same well. Otherwise, yeah, then there's no end to exploring yet another well, yet another well, yet another well.
It'll be like a bulldozer.
That could bury the well, though,
Yeah.
if you don't know how to use your tools.
Yeah. Use your tool.
Mm-hmm.
Use different tools to dig the well.
And here and there you will find some books, some writers talking about this, explaining Phowa. And then they'll give like more like essential Phowas, where again, without getting into the more esoteric aspects of the techniques that have been passed down, they give more general ones. So for example, you can imagine or visualize, you know, above the dying person, if you're helping someone, is a particular Buddha principle, Amitabha or Avalokiteshvara or whatever. And below is, you know, the person. And you think, you imagine, you visualize this person going into the heart of the deity. You can do that, I think. When someone is dying, may or may not be a practitioner. So we don't live, you know, in Tibet or Asia. And many people that we know have no idea about these things at all. So in cases where I've been asked, you know, oh, my so-and-so is dying now, what do I do? You know? And understanding what their context is, understanding, you know, who they are, all that. You know? More recently, it's like in Latin America, you know? I say, are they devout Catholics? They're like, well, devout enough, you know, nothing else, you know. I said, well, in that case, you know, when you go, you know, you ask if they want you to pray the rosary with them, or for them. If they want, then you do that. You know? You ask, you know, if they're able to answer. You know? then you do that. Now is not the time to tell them, oh, and then there's Omani Padme Hum. If they're not in the position to answer you or anything, then you say, you sit there with them, you do your own practice. Don't even, if you ask me, don't chant out loud, Om Mani Padme Hum. You're going to trigger, if they have very strong fears about other religions, it's just going to bring more turmoil in the person who's dying. But what you do from your heart, because you trust it, and you do it secretly, so to say, quietly, on your own, sitting and holding space for this person who's dying. Remember that it's not about you, okay? It's about that person. So, but if you get yourself in the right place, that will have an effect on the dying person. So whatever you can do to get yourself in the right place, you do it quietly, you do it secretly, so to say. Unless the person specifically say, oh, like Fabiola, I know you're spiritual, I know you practice Buddhism, can you say something? Then of course, you chant some mantras. But if the person is, especially if the person has some sort of fear or, resistance to this, now is not the time, Oh, can I convert you, to the swift path of Phowa? No. I tell this story where my, like a family friend, or rather, a friend of a family member. This case where the grandmother is ill and quite clear that it's like actively dying. But the father and the grandson have converted to evangelical Christianity, and so they're very concerned about grandma's eternal welfare, and so they were trying very hard to convert grandma. At some point, grandma got really fed up and said to them, you have to stop. If you continue this, I might have to disown you guys. Because all my life, I'm Buddhist. You can't tell me these things now. And then something like she said, go, please call this nun, like this nun that she knows. I want to see her. She's really distressed at that point. So when the nun came, an older nun too, an old friend, I suppose. I don't know much about the details. Told the nun about what's going on. My kids, my son, my grandson. And then after that meeting, the dying grandmother called the son and the grandson and said, "Okay, I'm ready to convert." So apparently, her Buddhist nun friend said to her, basically the gist of what the Buddhist nun friend said to her is like, first of all, we are Buddhists, and so our understanding of what the issues are is a little different. For us, what we have done throughout our life is most important. So you know what you have done. But for them, it seems like it's very important to them that you convert. And if you die without converting, it will cause them a lot of distress. So to not distress them, go ahead and convert. Doesn't matter to us. Now, I don't know the end of that story, whether any pastor would facilitate that kind of conversion. I guess not, it's not from the heart. But the main point here is like in our system, helping someone dying at that time, it's not about you.
If they're heavenly Christian and they believe the Bible like like a lot of these people do, and I would ask the people around that know him better than I did, or I would ask him what's his favorite passage of the Bible, and I would read that.
Yeah. I mean, we do. Sure,
Right.
absolutely. We do whatever, it's
Yeah.
good. On the other hand, there's another incident I read in this hospice Buddhist ministry book. There was an anecdote. There was a young chaplain. So chaplaincy programs train you so that you're interfaith. Right? So very much in the spirit of what we're talking about. You're there to help someone in distress, someone who's passing. It's not for you to impose your particular religious agenda, at least in the chaplaincy programs that are interfaith by nature. So this one chaplaincy program, this one person wrote about this experience. It said, so I think this person is Japanese American, so brought up in a particular Buddhist tradition from Japan, and he was also trained in as well, not just brought up, but himself trained in that tradition. Then there was a Japanese family with an elderly member who was dying, and so this was like his first time being called to go help the hospital. Maybe through a hospital network, they found him and said, "Oh, there's a Japanese family with a dying father. Could you come help?" So he said he went. He or she, I don't remember, went, and then made the assumption that they must be from a particular form of Japanese Buddhism, because apparently his own is quite a small group. So he went to the family, went to the room, and the dying person is maybe not conscious at this point. So together with the family, he said, "So can we, do you want me to do something, say some prayer?" And the family said yes. And so he thought, okay, well, I think they're probably this. So he starts chanting like Amitabha. Namamitabhas, Namamitabhas. And so in the room, the family eventually also Namamitabhas, Namamitabhas. After that, then finished, everyone was like, "Oh, thank you," everything. Then he left. And later he found out that they were Christians. But in that case, I think the family understood it. It doesn't matter. Moral of that lesson is don't assume that, you should ask, like, what are you and would you like? It turns out they're Christians.
That's just like this one story that I read on a hospice book that she went to go see this one guy, and he was always throwing fits, and she tried to read the Bible to him. She read part of the Bible to him, and he took it, and he ripped it up and went to I don't know which passage, I think it's King John or something, and he said, "I want that," and then the rest of the Bible was spread all over the room. And when she read that, he calm and cool and collected, and she was all kind of, wow, what an experience. You just never know what shaped her in when you're in hospice. But he was relieved after he had that passage.
However, it can help in terms of helping others. Then, but our ability to help others depends on our ability to have helped ourselves. Page 108 on the recitations book is the brief Sukhavati aspiration prayer. Emaho, wondrous, boundless illumination Buddha, the great compassionate Lord in the right, and Bodhisattva, powerful means left. Surrounded by an assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, in this place of wonder and boundless joy and happiness, this pure land of great bliss, when the time comes for us to pass from this life, may we be born there without any other intervening birth. Upon being born there, may we behold boundless illumination face to face. May all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions bless this fervent aspiration prayer of ours, so that it is achieved without any hindrances. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn may it arise, where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Changchu sem chorin poche, ma ge banam ge yurji, ge
As I mentioned the previous day, as is traditional, now is a good time for kata offering, if that's something that you'd like to participate